Do you find yourself stopping, waiting, putting off things? Come on, listen to the show. Let's see what we've got to say.
It's time for another show from Colin Jones, the Reasonable Adventurer. Time for you to take another step towards creating your own opportunities for satisfaction.
And it's a huge welcome to episode 83. I hope you are well. I hope you're starting to sort of just sneak into that festive season. I think it's upon us, isn't it? I mean, I don't think there's any turning it back now. And we can complain, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, when all of the shops started having all of that stuff there, all about Christmas. And we're thinking, oh, that's way, way, way too early. But nevertheless, I think it's okay now. I think we're in the right zone. I think some of us are starting to wind down and starting to look back on what Christmas means for us in terms of the year just gone. Did we manage to get done what we wanted to get done, right? And that's always tricky because when you have those aspirations at the beginning of the year, well, you've most probably got no idea of all of those unforeseen events and challenges which are going to pop up in your life and are going to challenge your time during that period of time. So I'm pretty happy with where things have got to. And I think more so when I think about 2016 so far, I think about a different pattern of living that I'm moving into, and I'm very comfortable with this different pattern of living. And there's a lot of other things that have got to be done to make that pattern of living sort of something that I'm comfortably set into. So it's most probably a lot of reinforcing that needs to be done in 2017 to get to where I'm going to be comfortable. But one of the things which I think this show has one of the things I've learnt from doing this show is not to seek perfection. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Perfection. Because it's something that we're all expected to sort of do. We were all measured in some way, shape or form. And there's an expectation of us being able to be perfect, or we're not going to do something unless we think we can do it perfectly, right? I just made a small stone structure in the backyard for my wife. It's not quite finished yet, but it'll be finished over the next few days. And I had no real plan, had no real idea. I just sort of figured the way it would sort of come to be. I don't think it's too bad. But is it perfect? No. But if I tried to make something perfect, chances are I would never have actually got to the point of getting it done. And that's the difference, If you actually want to be perfect, chances are you're going to not do a whole bunch of things. So my wife just asked me a couple of minutes. She came home from work and she said, "What do you want for Christmas?" And it's quite an interesting question because last year I definitely wanted a smartwatch, and she bought me a smartwatch. Luckily, she got it on special, so she saved a couple of $100. And the funny thing is, it hasn't gone back to that price. The watch is still $200 dearer than it was when she bought it, so she got very lucky. And I wear the watch every day, so it's one of those Christmas presents where I think to myself, well, I got, that was a good Christmas present because, if I'm out and about, I wear it every time I go somewhere. So I look back on other Christmas presents and then I started thinking, well, I've got no idea what I would like you to give me for Christmas. And to make matters worse, she doesn't actually know what she'd like me to give her for Christmas. And then I just looked in, cool gadgets, cool tech gadgets, gifts. I started looking, and of course, I couldn't find anything really that I felt like I needed. Right? I needed a watch last year, but I don't feel like I need anything in particular. And I go back a couple of years or even 3 years, and there was always a need. I always felt like there was a need for certain things. I was buying a lot of books, and while I'm sure I still need books, I've got a very good library now, so I don't have this strong need for particular things in that regard. Spent a lot of money on technology over the years, trying to get the right microphones and the right tools to enable me to be able to broadcast a show like this or produce materials for my students. And then along the way, it sort of dawned on me that actually the technology, it sort of gets in the way. You know, if you're travelling around, and I don't travel as much as I used to, but if you are travelling around, having a show that is dependent upon the physical production of a whole bunch of gear to make it happen creates limitations. So I have a very, very small little Roland hand recorder. I think it's about less than $300, and it does a great job. It's what I'm using right now, and I just simply put it on the table and record, and then I flick the memory card into my computer and upload it. It takes about, if you call it that, the post-production process, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes from when I've recorded the show to when it's actually online for people to be able to listen to. To me, that's pretty good. Whereas when I mucked around with different microphones and different processes, I found myself, one, not being consistent in what I was producing and therefore being unsure, and two, being worried about this perfection. Have I got it? Is it going to sound good enough? Because, I've got all this really good gear and there's that potential must surely exist for it to be perfect. Because, you listen to some podcast shows and the voice comes across very boldly and, it's got the big bass and it's all nice and clean. And then I think, well, really? I can add bass. I've played around with that in the past. And then you listen to your voice back and you think, why not just record it? Why not just do the show and it's done? So there's one real lesson I've learnt, and especially over this year. Just work out what it actually is you want to talk about and then do it. I don't ever use a script. I've got one piece of paper in front of me for today's show. It's got half a dozen bullet points. That's it. And therefore, I'm not beholden to a script. I don't need to be perfect in terms of following a script. I just say whatever I want. I know that I can talk. I know that I can rabble on about anything, really. And as long as there's a bit of conviction there, it'll come across okay. I hope. So that was the first one. That was the first lesson I learned. I don't need a hell of a lot of technology to have a podcast show. And it doesn't actually matter how much money I invest in trying to get the best equipment. Ultimately, it may not make that much difference. If you're listening to the show and you're thinking, I really wish he'd get rid of that crackle from his voice. I really wish the background noise wouldn't be there. I really wish. But if you're not wishing all those things, if you're just listening, then maybe that's all we have to have, right? Maybe that's as good as it needs to be for it to do the job. So I moved away from that. I stopped looking for tech items for potential Christmas presents because I thought, I'm not really sure there's anything I actually need. Still on our diet. That's going quite well. I haven't lost a lot of weight, but I'm confident that I'm eating better and my fitness side of things is certainly developing. And what I suspect might be happening is that I'm putting on some muscle at the same time as losing some weight. So, I just got to wait, I think, and stick to it, be consistent. And I think in the new year we're going to lose some weight. But the funny thing about fitness is I've got a gym, and I'll be honest to say that the gym is mainly these days been built up for my son. My son loves his football. Football in Australia is a pretty hard contact sport. And you need to have some muscle, otherwise you're going to get hurt. So, I'd rather see him build that muscle up and help protect himself in those contests when you hit each other pretty hard. That said, I always have that desire to sort of get back in and get fit. But really, does it take all of the right pieces of gym equipment to get fit? Do you got to have them all there? I found myself going full circle. Almost. I'm almost back to full circle. When I was about 26, 27 years old, as a cricketer, and one of the challenges of being a cricketer is you don't want to put on a lot of bulky muscle because it's going to slow your arm over as a bowler, right? and you want to exploit whatever degree of fast muscle twitch you've got. And my research told me that using a speedball, you see the boxers and they're punching the little bag up above their eye level and there's backwards and forwards, right? That this would be a fantastic way of, one, staying fit, anaerobic capacities being increased, and actually tuning that fast muscle twitch, right? So increasing your ability to really get that ball through quickly. Anyway, when I was in my mid-20s, I got this thing going. It was humming. It was great. And it's a really unique piece of fitness equipment because it only takes 23 minutes a day. And it's the hardest 23 minutes of the day that you'll ever live, because 6 3-minute rounds separated by a minute break is tough work. It's really tough work. And I've been slowly building back up to my 3-minute rounds. I'm now sitting on 2.5 minutes per round and going really well, doing it each day. And I can feel the strength coming back into my body. So it's really cool. So one piece of equipment, which is small, hangs on a wall, you could put it anywhere in your house and gives you your whole body a fantastic workout. I don't need all the equipment. I don't need another set of weights. I don't need a rowing machine. I don't need another thing that will make the gym look really cool if someone walks past and goes, wow, you guys have got a nice gym. But actually, maybe I'm not seeking perfection through this incredible layer of things. It's actually this one thing that's hard to use, that you've got to work your way up to. And once you're in sync, you're in sync. You can almost do it blindfolded. Again, if you don't step into the gym because you don't have the right gear, if you're seeking that sort of perfection, maybe you're never going to get started. Now, this is a real challenge for us all. It's a real challenge for us all. Many years ago, there's a guy, when I first started doing my PhD, there was a guy called John Kendall. And John said something to me, which I thought it was a joke, and he meant it in a humorous way. But it was actually the best advice that I've ever been given. And I've passed it on to several PhD candidates along the way. And I was some way through the early stages of my PhD. And I was most probably romanticizing how good it was going to be or the impact it might potentially have. And John just said to me, the best PhD, the very best PhD you can do is a completed one. And it's so true, right? It's so true. You don't have to worry about having the best one. You just have to have a completed one. That's the best one, yeah? So, what's stopping you from getting on and just getting something done? Not worrying about being a perfectionist, This sort of capacity to cope with these little less than optimal outcomes, right? Next week, I'm really excited. We've got a research boot camp. It'll be the third or fourth time I've been to it now. It's over at Tangalooma Island, which is a beautiful place. And the way the process works is everyone puts a paper in. You get 3 or 4 reviews back, and then you'll sit down with some really high quality people and get some really good direction on how to develop these ideas, that paper and whatnot. And a really good social sort of bookends on each day. So it's really, really nice place to go. And I started writing a paper for it, but then I changed my mind with about a week to go, and I quickly pulled together a paper and of the ideas that I was most passionate about. And I got some really good reviews back. And they all pretty much said the same thing, which was, hey, these are potentially really interesting ideas. Maybe you haven't really executed them as well as you could have, but let's talk about that, right? And I loved that. The fact that someone says, hey, there's something here to work with, and then there's the execution, which is the challenge, yeah? So that's the world I love to live in. That's the perfect world for me, right? I'm very, very comfortable being not so perfect. How about you? Are you okay at being not so perfect? Would you hand in something to other people to judge that you knew was sort of not really fully developed, that you knew was sort of maybe half-baked, that you knew wasn't your best work, but with the desire of getting that feedback, which would help you to reshape it, help you to move it to that next level? Or would you just try and sit it there and wait until such time as you've actually got it right, it's perfect, it's ready to go? Think it through. If you already know it's not perfect, when you get the reviews back and people's comments, you know that they're going to be offering you suggestions, right? If you think it's perfect and you send it off, then you're going to be really upset when someone says it's not perfect from their perspective, right? So I think this comes back. We've talked in previous shows about everybody's different capacity to cope with failure or disappointment. And I think this is one of those areas where it's very easy to fall into the trap of seeking perfection and not actually get anything done, right? So not use all the technology because you haven't learned it. I've got some wonderful pieces of software on my computer that I've bought over the years. I can see the end product they can create from the YouTube videos and things that, go with them. But I haven't actually been able to work out how to get there. It doesn't stop me playing with them from time to time, but I have something that other people have. It doesn't mean that I now have the ability to do something brilliant. I'm still stuck with an inability to use it. I have lots of fitness equipment, but if I don't go and use the gym, it doesn't actually help me, right? I can buy lots of technology to help me create a show, but if the show is now dependent upon my ability to use the technology, maybe the show's going to suffer, right? So this seeking perfection can be a trait, can also be an excuse to not do something. So there's my challenge to you. In terms of the world you live in, to what extent are you happy, and where can you be not so perfect? Yeah? What are the conditions that would enable you to be not so perfect? Can you imagine how being not so perfect might actually help you to move things along? Yeah? That's my challenge. That's a really cool thing to reflect on, I think, for us all, right? Because it's not something I'm conscious of every day. It takes me that moment once a year when my wife says to me, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I start thinking of all the things that she could buy me, and then I start realizing I don't really need that. It would be a pretty cool present, and I'm sure I'd play with it for 24 hours, and then I'd put it down and maybe a few more plays, and I may not use it. I've got drawers full of shiny, cool gadgets that I don't use. So I don't really need to get any more gadgets, right? And I think of fitness, because I think you're living an outdoors life in Queensland, so fitness is sort of it's always there in front of you as something that you could devote time to. But how much time do you have? If I bought 10 more unbelievable fitness pieces of equipment, and let's say they all require roughly 10 to 15, 20 minutes for you to actually get on and use it, where am I going to find the time to get on all those 10 different pieces of equipment? What if I just find one, and if it actually does the job, right? Like the speedball, right? I don't have to be perfect, right? I just have to do it. I just have to have a go. I have to be able to accept that I don't have to be perfect at it, and then I'll get some feedback, and that feedback might be my heart rate telling me that I'm nowhere near fit enough to go 3 minutes around for 6 rounds, right? But that's okay, because I can use an interval timer to build up which I'm at, and I'm most probably tomorrow or on the weekend, I'll slot into 6 3-minute rounds. And when I get to that, I'm going to be so happy. And all I need to do is then start to increase the actual punching rate to work harder and harder at that. And, I know that that's going to benefit me. And I may consider myself to be back to some degree of perfection with that, and that's fine. But as long as other things in my life remain open to me being not so perfect, I think the world will take care of itself. Until next week, cheerio.